Tabernacle Township Committee meeting for April 29th, 2019. Please stand for flexible.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Sunshine Brothers, this meeting is called pursuant to the Open Public Meetings Law. This meeting of April 29th, 2019. In Senator Central Record, Arlington County Times, and Courier Post. Posted on the bulletin board in Town Hall, and has remained continuously posted and requiring notices under the statute. In addition, a copy of this notice is and has been available to the public, and is on file in the office of the municipal clerk. We have roll call. Ms. Brown. Mr. Lee.
Here.
Mr. Moore.
Present.
Mr. Yates. Mayor Barton.
Present. Thank you, Ms. Ryan. Public comment on agenda items except second reading ordinances. Anyone from the public like to comment? Mr. Brooks.
Thank you, Mayor Barton, and good evening, everyone. I have three comments regarding the budget, which is item 4. First regards salaries and wages for the finance. My understanding is that there's $6,500 as a salary increase, and that from previous discussions at previous meetings, I understand that there for Ms. Smith and Mr. Haynes, both of whom achieved new credential status or a higher level of achievement. I'd like to know what is the current salary for each of them, and to what salary are you anticipating a raise for them? Second question and comment. I gather that the budget includes the payment of insurance premiums for TAA participants, not the out-of-town participants, but the Tabernacle participants. As in past years, I would expect that we're paying the commercial liability insurance and the medical and accidental death insurance. I want to know if there are any other insurances that we're paying for TAA or TAA participants. And my comment regarding that is that it's time that TAA becomes self-sufficient. And I'm not talking about the maintenance that Tabernacle puts into the fields. And I realize this is somewhat of a sacred cow because many people on the committee have served on TAA's board. I'm talking about the fees that really belong to the participants in order to participate in the programs that TAA runs, which are sports programs. Their mission is to enrich the lives of kids through sports programs. And I would say that if TAA has the financial ability to give out scholarships for the benefit of higher education, they can certainly either cover the cost of insurance themselves or charge the participants who are actually using that insurance. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that higher education is not a good thing. It's a great cause. There are lots of great causes. But TAA is focused on only one great cause, and that's running sports programs for kids. Giving money away to a select few who are going to college is outside of their mission. So they could take that money and repurpose it, or they could include the amount for insurance premiums within what they charge for fees. That would be the fair, that would be the fair thing to do. My third comment and question concerns the discussion that was held for the possible use, township's use of Sequoia in 2019. And the discussion the discussion led to the committee deciding to direct Mr. Haynes to put $25,000 into the budget for the maintenance of Sequoia for a year. I'd like to know, has the school district put any money into its budget for the maintenance of Sequoia for the year? Because if they do, we don't need to. We're also almost in the month of May, so roughly half the year is gone. We don't need a full year of maintenance.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Brooks. Anyone else have?
I would conclude, better to save taxes, reduce taxes, than to put money into something for which there's really no plan to do.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else from the public? Mrs. Brooks?
Good evening, Fran Brooks, Morris Meadow Road. I have a couple comments about the budget. It's clear that there's no belt tightening going on, and that your attitude is, if there seems to be a collective attitude that if the money isn't spent, then it just gets dumped into surplus, and that's a good thing. But it's not a good thing. I mean, it's time to do some belt tightening. If you don't have plans to spend the money, such as the $25,000 for Sequoia, the public safety director, you shouldn't be packing your line items. It's actually poor fiscal management. The other comment I want to make is about Oprah. All your Oprah problems are self-inflicted. It's actually ridiculous. It's just ludicrous that you want to put in $13,000 for special counsel. If you're a professional, professionals and staff can't handle the kinds of Oprahs, and I look at those logs and I see the nature of the question, the requests. If they can't handle Oprah requests, then they should be replaced. At the last meeting, Mr. Haynes made a comment about the fire company budget regarding the legal costs, and that the legal costs were due to Oprah. Well, I sent off an Oprah to the fire company, and since 2017, they've had exactly 3 Oprahs. So this is not true that they're increasing. First of all, Mr. Haynes, you weren't even at the meeting. I believe only Mayor Barton and Mr. Moore went to the meeting. But so those costs were not due to an increase in Oprahs, and that is factually can be determined, which I have. It seems like what the committee is doing, the clerk and the professionals, are trying to pin all of your financial problems on Oprah, that in fact these problems have been you've created yourself, and by withholding documents, by hiding documents. So you don't need $13,000 in the budget to deal with special counsel, because if you have staff here, they can handle most of these are conventional, and they should be able to handle them. And if they can't, they should be replaced, in all due respect, Mr. Lynn. I'm glad to see that the meeting minutes are, 3 months of meeting minutes are now up for approval, and I would hope that in the future, regarding the OTMA, that they are more promptly presented, and that committee members are aware that you have about a 30-day turnaround on OTMA requests, and that's settled law. So having said that, I'd just like to also point out regarding some of the comments that Mr. Brooks made, one of the things is, what is the % increase for Ms. Smith and Mr. Haynes? The insurance for TAA is $9,100, just like the TRS has finally come around and is paying its own insurance. It's time for TAA. They took in a net asset of $160,000 last year. It's time for them to pick up the cost, this organization, to pick up the cost. We got no snacks. We paid for the snack stand, which they said they would pay for. The organization said it would pay for. We paid for the profits from, they're getting all the profits. It's time for the organization to pay its own insurance costs and collect whatever it needs as a user fee.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else from the public? Okay, we're going to close the public comment. Introduction of the 2019 municipal budget, first reading. The public hearing for this budget will be May 28, 2019 at 7:30 p.m. Have a motion?
I'll move for the first reading, May 28th at 7:30.
Second. Okay. Any discussion required?
No.
Roll call?
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Ordinance on second reading. This is a public hearing with comments. Public hearing was previously held on March 25th. Ordinance 2019-1 was tabled at that time. So this is 2019-1 amending Chapter 7 of Traffic Section 12 of the revised general ordinances of the Township of Tabernacle. Public comments, please.
Could we have Mr. Boyd, we asked him to compare the weights to the neighboring towns and that?
Tom, would you like to come forward, please? Sure. This is Richard Boyd, our construction official. And Tom, could you review the ordinances in surrounding towns with respect to
certainly will.
and here in Tabernacle Township?
Certainly will, Mayor. Thomas Boyd, zoning officer, Tabernacle Township. I had to figure out what they were. I apologize. At the last workshop meeting, it was recommended that we look at what other municipalities, surrounding municipalities, are working with as far as gross vehicle weight of their vehicles, parking them, so forth and so on. It was also requested on advice of council that we look at both Evesham and Mount Laurel, I believe. So what we did there. I not only looked on the internet, but called if I couldn't find it. Southampton has no restriction as far as parking of gross vehicle weight of vehicles. Medford currently has no weight restriction, however, their council is in discussion right now about it. Currently, they are allowed one commercial vehicle, but there is no gross vehicle weight restriction. So they are considering lowering that, but that is a consideration that they're discussing. Chemung has an 8,000 pound for commercial only. Woodland Township has no restriction. Bass River had no restriction. Washington Township had no restriction. Waterford Township had a gross vehicle weight of 19,000 pounds. And then Evesham Township had a restriction of 10,000 pounds with it being a commercial vehicle or vehicles greater than 2 axles. But it was limited to the hours of 7:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. So they didn't want overnight parking of any type of vehicles. And Mount Laurel had a similar practice of, they limited their time from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., not permitted over 8,000 pounds gross vehicle weight. Also, while doing the research and looking through our ordinances, we actually have 2 locations in which the same exact wording is located. 712 was what we were discussing, which is traffic. And in 1717 under zoning, it is also referenced, but in that particular section, it's referenced under commercial and recreational vehicles in residential zones. So there's actually 2 sections. The 712, which was what I originally presented, which was, if you remember my initial presentation from back in March, my concern was that we have a homeowner that drives a vehicle and they can't even use it. And I gave the example when Mr. Kramer's vehicle was in the shop and he had a replacement vehicle, it wasn't allowed to be put at his facility. That was under 712 in traffic. In 1717A, it's the same exact wording as it is in 712, except the title of that chapter is Commercial and Recreational Vehicles in Residential Zones. Counselor, do you have that? I have it here if you want to see it. So one of the things I think, looking at it, and I don't know if we still need the 2 sections. I actually called Mr. Nimes' office and spoke to Joanne about this last week. So she suggested we discuss it tonight, and that's why there was nothing formal for the discussion as to whether we actually need 2 separate ones. If we don't, then we may be able to just remove the 712 and then look, which is the traffic for everybody, and look at the zoning, which is 1717. I don't need to be confusing with the numbers, but.
A little late.
I know, but it's in my from looking at it so common. It still doesn't alleviate the fact that we have numerous folks that work in the trades that will have vehicles at their house, self-employed carpenters, masons, electricians, plumbers, roofers, siding guys. so forth and so on, that will have vehicles over that just because they have commercial plates, can't park it. The other difficulty that I found, once again, is pursuant to 39:4-46, commercial motor vehicle identification, gross vehicle weight registered does not have to be displayed until you get to 26,001 pounds, which makes it extremely difficult for me to determine what the gross vehicle weight vehicle is. This may be a question, I guess, more so for Pete. Would we be able to either limit it to a pound rating that as I look at the vehicle, I could say, yes, it's definitely over that, i.e. a 4 Series or a 4000 Series vehicle? Can we somehow word that to be that way?
I'm not sure, we had talked about specific weight, so I guess I'm
Correct.
curious as to what you're exactly asking. You're talking about putting truck models in the ordinance?
Was that, yes. In other words, if I had a 450, that would be permitted, but a 550 would not.
Yeah,
I don't-
I wouldn't recommend that. The
Okay,
problem is
then that's
because
fine.
you have, only, Tom, because you have so many different manufacturers, and you don't know what's gonna come after this. Every manufacturer has a base, has a common thread, and it's the GVRW, or GVWR.
Right.
But I mean, if that, what you're saying is from an enforcement standpoint, I might not be able to sit from the street and tell exactly whether that's an F-350 or an F-450.
Well, I'm not going to be able to tell the gross vehicle weight.
Unless it's clearly a model which exceeds it.
Which is what, and that's what I guess what I'm getting at. If
I'm
it's
saying
clear,
unless it's clearly, and
Right.
what you're saying is it's not clear in a
it's
lot
not
of
clear.
cases.
Exactly.
But it's very easy for Tom to drive by a house and see 10 construction vehicles sitting there. It don't matter how much they weigh. And that's, I think, what the bottom line is. The feedback that we got, the public meeting, whatever it was, a month and a half ago, I think that the underlying current was not necessarily the weight of vehicles. It was people doing commercial businesses out of their house to excess.
That was not my understanding. So I'm just hearing that for the first time.
Yeah, you weren't here, so I can recognize that. But I think that's, at the end of the day, I think that's what the bottom line is that there's a concern that there's a lot of businesses that are running out of their houses with multiple vehicles. And I think that's probably where this really originated from, not necessarily the weight or the size. That could be part of it maybe, but I think, at least from my perception, is that we've got to be a little active somehow in managing commercial businesses run out of residential neighborhoods. And if you have one commercial truck, Joe Yates has an example, he commented he's got a Brooks roofing truck sitting there in his driveway, but he doesn't have 7. So I think that may be an avenue we need to at least think about, or at least go after. I'm not quite sure how to do that, but I think that's, that's what the undercurrent is.
As a recommendation, we could limit the amount of commercial vehicles then.
And that's easily enforceable.
That would be very easily
Trying to
enforceable.
figure out how much a F-250 weighs
Exactly.
versus a Silverado
Exactly
extended
right.
cab. Doug might know because he's a Chevy guy, but honestly, there's no way for you to be able to determine that. And that's not fair to you,
And
or for the residents. for that
It's
matter.
not fair for anybody, it's exactly right. And if that was the crux of it, which I totally apologize, I did not understand that was the crux of it, then to put a limit on it, I think would be a very
Well, it wasn't
easily.
necessarily the crux of it. I think what Mr. Lee is saying is it was mentioned as a common issue as to why this was, being talked about in order to strengthen the restrictions, because in part, many people did say that they were concerned about
And
commercial
talking
operation.
and talking to residents that were here, talking to residents that are concerned about the issue, and listening to the dialogue of that meeting, and this is just me individually, Steve Lee, it's not the entire committee, but my perception is that the bottom line of the issue is about commercial businesses running out of their houses.
There was also a healthy discussion about the size of vehicles and what is a reasonable number and what is not. So
Right.
it was really both. But you could limit it to one commercial vehicle. In your experience, Tom, do most of these gentlemen and ladies that are operating businesses use commercial tags? They don't use non-commercial tags for their siding company or
That's
their
correct.
HVAC, they all have commercial tags?
I don't want
More or
to
less?
say more or less.
More than
yes,
less?
yes.
So then limiting the number would then obviously have an effect, along with some type of realistic weight restriction, even if it was on the high side, to eliminate enforceability issues, might be the magic potion for addressing both issues, right? The number of commercial vehicles is limited to one. You're not going to be having multiple vehicles stored there. You're not going to have people come there in the morning to be dispatched from there, because they can only park one vehicle there at a time. If the number was fairly large, I know the gentleman had concerns about a high number because it allows some pretty healthy pickups and some pretty healthy trucks. But to the extent that when you get down between that 12,000 and 19,000, those trucks are indistinguishable.
Exactly right.
Okay, so do you then solve that by just picking the high number, knowing that they're only gonna have one, and that, you know, if they get into that area where it's a high enough where the vehicle model itself gives it away, then you would have
Correct.
easy enforceability at that level.
And do you, maybe a way to do it also is to define the type of body, like a van, a pickup, a utility, and exclude like dump trucks and tow trucks and buses and things like that, huh? Does that help you?
It necessarily wouldn't, because I could have in theory, I could have a 350 dump truck that would be under the 12,000 pound gross weight now if it's an older vehicle. I could have a brand new 250 dump truck that would be over the current one. That's my dilemma, frankly. It's
So what happens if somebody has a triaxle, right?
yeah, I mean, I think a triaxle, it's kind of obvious, and that's why I was asking Mr. Lang if we could put 450 and below or 4,500 below, but he has a valid point of they can change.
And you'd have to list every manufacturer.
And you'd have to list,
essentially.
you know, and that, right now, there's 3 basically, but then if one of the foreign manufacturers come in with a heavy-duty truck, which they currently don't, then we're running into those issues. So,
But to be clear, the other towns are, a lot of them, like you said, no restriction at
a
all.
lot of them are.
And those that are restricting it are using weight. Most of them, I heard you say.
They're using weight. Chemung was 8,000 pounds, Waterford was 19, and both Evesham and Mount Laurel were lower weights, but only at night, so that you couldn't park it at night. But they also have full-time police forces that would enforce that ordinance.
Well, not a zoning ordinance, that's the difference really between having it in traffic and zoning. And that's why it's in both places, because the troopers can write it if it's in traffic, if they feel like it. Well, there are circumstances when it could come up.
Tom, emergency vehicles, they'll be excluded too, correct?
Under 1717, they would be excluded. Under 712, as I read it, maybe Mr. Lang differs, but as I read it, under 712, it would not be.
Because we have a dump truck and tractor and plow that sits on Crickett's Mill in a residential area.
Very well aware of that, sir.
Okay.
And it's, the way it's worded, it's only for use in Tabernacle, so it would be,
Okay, absolutely.
I'm
Just want to
trying,
make sure that's clarified, that's all.
very much aware that sits there, and you are correct.
Yeah, would the commercial tags solve that problem, because would that be,
No, that's
Tag
not
different.
no, that's state
so
government.
it wouldn't be tagged as a commercial vehicle, right?
But technically, it's commercial.
It's
Yeah, it's-
technically a commercial vehicle
Yes,
with state
commercial vehicle
tags.
state tags.
As I understand it.
Yes,
so.
100% correct.
Okay.
You could say pickup bodies with a GVWR not to exceed 19,000, and then no commercially tagged, you name it, box vans, all those others where they would be ripe for abuses given the weight. You know?
You can do that, and next month we'll have a group of plumbers that have box trucks who will be in here, or we'll have a landscaper that has a little 350 with a dump that just brings it home, takes it back. It's, if you start doing by body style, be prepared that you'll have whatever group you exclude here next month.
Right.
So you think the weight is the way to do it?
I think you can do it by weight and do it as commercial versus
One commercial tag
one commercial tag, I don't know whether you want to use 19,000 or you want to stay at 17.5, but I think that limits you to a smaller base truck and stay out of the body style, because you're going to have whatever group you exclude here to say, why is it all right for the carpenter who has a pickup?
I thought maybe they were more distinguishable as to, or less distinguishable as to weight, but
I think Mr. Lee's right. I think the feeling from the public, I won't necessarily say at the meeting, but the conversation I heard after the meeting, and that discussion was, it's the number of vehicles. So whether you want to do one, whether you want to do two, that's a balancing act for you to decide. But that's,
So, and you're saying 17.5 is the right number, Doug? For commercial?
It's like hitting a dartboard. I mean, it really.
17.5 this year is the right number.
Yeah, it could be different, it could be different in 3 years, it's just, it really
Right
depends.
now, an F-450 in a pickup
Yeah,
version,
that
you
could-
can get to 16.9. You can spec it that way. It looks just like every other dual-wheel pickup that's out there. You know. But, so this year, I'd say that number's right.
So we would just have to revisit it if the industry changes 2 or 3 years from now. It comes up with a truck that,
You know, you could go down to 16.9, but who
But how do
knows,
you-
next year Dodge may have 17 just to beat the next one on top.
Yeah, but how does Tom enforce it? I mean, that's the, I keep coming back to how's Tom enforce it?
well, what he'll have to do is he'll have to say, if it's not readily distinguishable from the road or otherwise, and I have no other information, I might not be able to write this one unless I can get, proof positive, I end up knocking on the door and talking to them. Or otherwise, if it's clearly over by the model itself, then you clearly would have to issue a summons at that point. But I think you'll have to exercise some discretion if it's 17.5, where some of those models of the pickups will be indistinguishable, and I guess you have to take that on a case-by-case basis, would be my suggestion.
Do we really want to do that? I
You
mean,
want it at
let's,
17, would you rather have it at 17, so the 550 is completely out?
I'm fine with the 17. If you wanted to,
That's the easiest thing, is you go 450, 4500, 4000 series or 4500 series Dodge, anything above that, when you bring them to court, they prove that it didn't.
any commercial vehicle has to have the weight on the side of the truck.
not until, according to
26,000.
26001, as I understand it.
There's an awful lot out there with less.
The commercial has to have the name, right?
Commercial, yeah, I mean,
Commercial has to have the name, right, and address.
Yeah, but I was getting at, what I was getting at was the weight,
the weight isn't until, as I understand it,
not until 26?
26,001.
That's right. Yeah.
As I understand it.
We built a truck specifically to get under 26.
Exactly. For CDL and for, exactly right.
Do you want to look at that?
Well, Peter, the registration has the weight on it, if I remember right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the discretion, you would have to engage the vehicle owner to see if it's over or under.
If they give it to me, yes, I understand. I mean, as long as this committee's fine with me using my best discretion for, I have a triaxle dump truck, obviously that is, and if I have a 350, 450 that's
And you presently can have a triaxle, if you put it in a building, it's fine.
That's correct, that is correct, if it's in a building. So. And then the one in the zoning also allows for recreational vehicles or so forth and so on, so that we don't have that issue.
Oh, good, thanks.
So should traffic have that exception?
I don't know why we have the difference. I mean, I understand that the one the police are able to write, the one the zoning
Should we
is.
modify the traffic one to include exceptions for recreational?
Here's your enforcement officer, do you think that's appropriate? I mean,
I think that would be appropriate because part of the issue is in the traffic regulation as it's written, that a police officer, as I understand it, could write ordinance 712 for anything over 12,000 pounds, which would include a state vehicle utilized for fighting wildfires. Where,
Are you doing a motorhome
or a motorhome, or a brand new F-350. Whereas in 1717, as I understand it, those things would be excluded.
Yeah, if you have personal tags on it. we're pretty
Correct.
much excluded.
If you had-
If personal tags on a pickup, you're pretty much excluded from this.
Under 1717,
Yeah.
right, under zoning aspect of it. Under traffic, you're not.
Okay.
Well, but the parking regulation regulates truck, bus, trailer, or tractor. They're just making it clear that that doesn't include a recreational vehicle when it comes to the zoning, so. I think that can be read consistent with each other right now. But it ends up what they want to do, so that's really what we want to reflect, so. So there's a consensus among the committee to do the 17,001 commercial vehicle, and then include the recreational vehicle parked, it would not include a recreational vehicle parked outside or in a side yard area, in a side or rear yard area, only with a limit of one recreational per family permitted outside of the building. Recreational vehicles shall be used for temporary, no recreation shall be used for. So that exception allows one recreational vehicle in a side or rear yard that would be no closer than the front of the facade of the house, and that right now you have that exception. I think they're making that clear that that is not prohibited by this GVWR issue, again, which clearly in the traffic indicates that it's aimed at truck, bus, trailer, or tractor. So certainly we want to make sure that they are consistent. What's before you tonight is a tabled first reading, is that correct? Was it on for second reading,
Actually, already had.
It's already had.
We had the first reading, so.
We had the public
it was-
hearing also.
Right, we had the public hearing, so.
Are these sufficient enough changes to
I
require
think
to
they
be
are.
re-advertised?
Yeah, I think they are, because, these weights are gonna affect a lot of different people in different ways. If we pull it back, we can make it 17,000 pounds and one commercial vehicle, and then just make sure that 1717 or 712 are consistent with each other. But I think we only need to leave the exception with respect to recreational vehicles in the zoning part. I think you want to keep them both, though, because you allow the state police potentially to use this if they wanted to. Otherwise, if it's not in here, they can't write a zoning ordinance violation. So
Steve, you okay with that?
there are times when they're doing enforcement activities that
Sam, you okay with one commercial
would be
vehicle?
useful to them.
And do we need to write an exemption for emergency vehicles?
There is
Is it in there?
yeah.
Under zoning, there is.
Okay.
So it's 1717.
So we'll include that in traffic? Exception for emergency vehicles in traffic?
Well, but it's regulating parking, so, you mean you're talking about for the forest
Yeah.
fire? For somebody who's in the forest fire and that kind of thing?
Or an ambulance.
Or an ambulance, or a fire.
Because they bring it home and they're gonna use it to be dispatched from home, is that
It's hard to know
right?
what happens, but I know that there have been ambulances in neighborhoods.
Fire chief's vehicle,
Yeah.
potential,
So then we'll make sure that that exception runs throughout.
please.
Maybe you could do that by the tag, if it's, if you got a commercial tag, right, and it's a emergency vehicle, it's gonna be tagged either state, county, or municipality. How are the ambulance tagged?
There used to be no fee or municipal, depending on who purchased them. There is a new tag on all of them that was required by the health department, and I do not remember what they changed them a year or two ago. That required them to have a different nomenclature in the front for emergency vehicle.
So I'll get with Tom and we'll make these minor changes and re-advertise it for another hearing, okay?
Okay, Tom.
I'm sure if there were 17.
I'm fine. Yes, because it gives me, as long as you folks are fine, it gives me a line now where I have an idea of what that is.
And Joe just asked me if I was okay with it, and I'm not, I'm more comfortable if you're comfortable, because you're the guy that's boots on the ground that has to enforce it.
Yes.
So,
I am, at least there, I have in my head a clear delineation between what will be and what won't be. And I think that the body styles above 17 are different than the body styles. They're all relatively the same from 17 under. And that's at now. And if we have to change this or look at it in the future, or we have folks in the construction industry that are purchasing vehicles that, because of technology. As I said, the one ordinance, I believe it was the zoning ordinance, was written a long time ago when a, quote, 1-ton pickup truck had a gross vehicle weight of 8,000 or 9,000 pounds or something like that. And today it's,
Okay,
okay?
thank you, Tom.
Thank you, gentlemen. I
So here-
appreciate it. Thank you.
You already worked this, and since we don't have a workshop between now and our next meeting, can you get the address out to everyone? Of course. And so we can get some comments, our committee can weigh in, others can weigh in on it. But I think what I'd like to do is, because we're going to take comment anyway, is get comments from the public and see how they feel about what we're proposing. And the changes we're proposing is this ordinance, we will not be voting on this tonight. We're basically going to start from scratch with this, right, Peter? But there's enough significant changes in this ordinance.
Yeah, I mean, we're
And
just
we'll have to
making minor
re-advertise it.
changes, but given the nature of those changes, we're gonna re-advertise
Right.
it to make sure that the public is, has a fair chance of understanding exactly what
Right,
you're
so,
doing.
so what we're looking at is one commercial vehicle and a weight of 17,500. Anyone from the public have a comment on this ordinance? Yes, sir. Come up here and name and address, please.
Lyle Manheimer, 5 Log Road, Tabernacle, New Jersey.
Thank you, Lyle.
We just heard testimony that most of the outlying townships are 10,000, 8,000. I fail to understand why we need to go to 17,500 pounds. I just don't understand it. I don't want some big vehicle parked across the street from my house because the guy is allegedly in some sort of business. If he wants to run an excavating business or something like that, then he should be on a major thoroughfare, Tabernacle Chatsworth Road, Medford Lakes Road, someplace like that, and he can run his business there, or he can run his business where it's zoned commercial residential. I fail to see why we need to increase this above any other township in the area. Waterford is in a different county. Waterford is in Camden County. I thought we were looking to compare apples to apples. So it makes no sense to me. What's going to happen if I come in and complain about somebody that's got a 40-foot tractor trailer parked for years in a front yard? Are we going to change that ordinance?
that violates the ordinance.
Yeah, that's a violation.
That's a violation.
That's a violation.
That's a
of
straight
the- but
violation.
are we going to change
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
So that that person isn't in violation?
Not as long
Or
as I'm
somebody
sitting
that parks a utility
No.
trailer in their
No,
front
that-
yard?
Yeah,
Are
no.
we going to change that one?
Yeah,
Not as long as I'm sitting there.
I think you people are entering dangerous, dangerous territory here. I really, really do. And I think it's unjust and unfair to most of the residents in Tabernacle to raise this to 17.5. I don't see the purpose of it.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Yes, sir.
John Yulito, 5 Moore Road West. You talked about one commercial tag on the top. What about commercial trailers that are going to be hooked up to that truck? You don't have to, are they going to be allowed to be on that property, residential property?
Well, you bring up a good point, because we didn't discuss trailers.
And how many trailers can you put on a residential property with commercial tags on it? And if they don't fit in the driveway, they park them on the street. And let me tell you right now, that's a visual impact for people driving up and down the street. Little kids can walk out behind that trailer and get hit by a car. You people know about it if it ever happens. Don't say you didn't know about it. It will happen. I've seen it come close to happening on my street. So that's the one question I want to ask you. And I asked you about, does the Pine Barrens have to approve this?
The Pinelands, no.
No, they don't have to
Well,
approve it.
they'll ultimately
Yeah,
get
they
a
don't have to
copy.
cross their
but-
desk at all.
Yeah, they'll be sent for a conformance review. It'll hit a conformance review, but it's not anything that they're likely to take a position on.
Okay, well, we talked about who's going to enforce this, right? And what's to stop other towns, other people from other townships bringing their trucks and parking them in our properties now? You know, if we're gonna up the weight limit now, that we can keep on residential property, somebody from another township where they can't park their truck there, they'll bring it to our properties now?
Based on what the ordinance, based on the discussion we had, and this is something that's gonna be written, and we're gonna have another public comment period to talk about it, but it's one vehicle. That's the one thing that I was kind of pushing for, was one vehicle.
Okay.
So someone, if you've got, already have one commercial vehicle sitting there, that's the homeowner, and somebody else decides to come park there, that's violates the ordinance.
Okay, and like I said, who's gonna enforce all that?
And going back to the trailer thing for a second, I think, and I don't know this because I'm not a DMV guy, a trailer is considered a commercial trailer is considered a vehicle. It doesn't matter if it's propelled or not propelled, but if it's tagged, it's a vehicle. Whether it's a snowmobile, whether it's a, whatever it is, in terms of a commercial tag, a vehicle's a vehicle.
It's a registered vehicle.
It's a registered vehicle. So I think if you had a trailer and a truck, it's two vehicles. But I don't know that. That's something that's why Pete's writing that down.
Well, it is what you say it is. Right now, you regulate, no person shall park any truck, bus, trailer, or tractor. So you already regulate trailers.
Okay.
That would have had that GVWR above whatever the weight is.
Right.
So you can say, one commercially tagged vehicle or trailer, and then just have, you'd be limiting them to one commercial tag on the property, and it would still have to comply with that weight limit. It does that now.
Okay.
So I can write the language to include trailers, and if you use the trailer as your commercial tag, then that's all you get, if that's what you want me to write.
Okay. Anything else?
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I'll get one bite there. Mr. Callahan.
I disagree with what he's saying.
What was your name again?
Mike Callahan.
Thank you.
So where you live?
18 Moore Road, West Tabernacle,
Thank
New
You need
Jersey.
to tell her, not me. Thank you.
Anyway, I happen to have a business years ago, and I had two commercial trucks in my driveway, which bothered nobody. I never parked it on the street and all that. So my son has a box truck, and he has a 250, all right? And sometimes they're in my yard, but not all the time. I cannot see this ordinance the way you're writing it. A 350 and 250, so, I understand if you had big trailers, I had no problem with that. But two commercial trucks, which I had, all right, I don't understand why we're trying to be that specific. If I buy two 350s, where am I gonna park? They're heavy. All right, have the 450. If somebody just bought it, I couldn't believe it. All right, so you're stymieing people who want to work. And I understand, two trucks were always in my property, over in Canada. I never had a complaint. I've had trucks on my street, like I told you before, people leave at 6 o'clock in the morning. Wake me the hell up. I'm not running down here and saying, hey, they can't go to work at 6 o'clock in the morning. We have to be fair, all right? And fairness is this. He has a truck on his property, all right? He doesn't have a rate. He has a 350, all right? And he has a 150 or 150 parked next to him. Now I think we're getting ridiculous, all right? And they're nice, neatly parked.
They have commercial tags on them, Michael, both of them? Are they commercial or regular tags?
Well, the big one he just bought, I'm not sure, you understand
Yeah.
that, okay? It's just like Mike Rizziano just bought. And I can't, since I was in business and I see people trying to make a living, all right, 350, 250. Yeah, if you pull up a dump truck, I'll be standing right next to you, all right, screaming. But two trucks in your driveway and they're parked correctly and not on the road, I don't think that harms anybody. The view, we live in Pinehurst, all right? And I've had trucks on my place, I totally disagree.
Okay,
Yeah, that's it,
thank you.
okay?
Anyone else from the public? Mrs. Brooks?
Ann Brooks, Moores Meadow. At this time, I am just, I stand incredulous over how you've handled this issue. You hastily went to first reading regarding the process. I'm talking about process. You hastily went to first reading. You've now ended up second reading. You had residents come in to make valuable comments. And here we have at second reading, Mr. Boyd coming in with a wealth of information that should have been processed even before you went to first reading. That research should have been done, and all of the variables that go into the construction of an ordinance should have been vetted before you ever went to first reading, but that doesn't happen here. You spin your wheels, you don't do your homework, you're bringing in staff, you're asking staff to do more work. I have to wonder where my taxes are going, because this person does not deserve a 2% increase if the research could be done prior to the organization of an ordinance at first reading. It really kills me that my taxes are being spent on bad performance. And on top of it, there are so many changes that are now being considered. You have to renotice, which costs us money. Instead of doing your homework properly, and I've been doing this for 6 years, coming to these meetings. My blog's been going for 6 years. I cannot believe that you're still performing at the level you are performing on issues like this, the process issues. It's time to change your approach. It's as if it's built into your DNA that you have to rush into first reading, you have to rush through second reading, and never get the information that you really need to make an informed decision. The process is terrible. The process that you guys implement is awful. I'm not speaking to the specifics because I can't say, I'm not studying, I'm not getting paid $5,000 a year to do your homework, so I'm not wading into it. But I'm looking at process, and the process stinks. The process that you folks implement stinks. And it's time to pull back and stop wasting our money. I didn't bother to check out what notices are costing now, but this happened. This is not the first time. This is multiple times where you rush into issues and do not vet the issues properly. You simply rush into first, go past first, go into a public hearing, and then end up having to make major changes. Because this is an issue, you add the things that Mr. Lang has recommended. If language changes, you have to renotice this, re-advertise. It's a major change in the proposed ordinance. So, it's time to change your ways and implement a different process. Okay? Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Mr. Brooks?
Stuart Brooks, Moores Meadow Road. I want to reiterate that same point. You just introduced the budget. There was zero discussion.
Mr. Brooks, do you have anything new to add?
Yes, I do. It's
Because
my
we already
opinion.
heard what we heard.
Doesn't matter.
Please don't
It doesn't matter. He's an
Mayor,
individual citizen. He can speak
You would
and say the
reset
same
it to 3
thing.
minutes. I'd like to continue.
Continue.
You just went through a budget introduction, one of the most significant things you do in a year with zero discussion, just a perfunctory vote. This is the opposite. This was a meaty issue that required lots of research. All of the discussion, all the substantive discussion came as you were at public hearing. It'd be better, in my humble opinion, and having watched you guys for 6 years, move most of that discussion either to workshop before you draft the ordinance or to first reading. And that way you don't have to jump through hoops and go backwards and forwards when you finally get it right. Because that's the point, is to get it right, or as close to right as you can, to understand the issue and to draft an intelligent ordinance that addresses the issue. You might not satisfy everyone in the ordinance, but you can say, we did the best we could. The way you're doing it now, you're not doing it the best you could, because you're jamming everything into second reading at the public hearing, and you're not leaving enough time for you to deliberate and produce a good ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Okay, we'll close the public portion. Okay, ordinance 2019-2, an ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and establish a cap bank for calendar year 2019.
So moved.
Second? Any discussion required?
Yes, sir.
Okay, roll call?
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Are we to open it to the public? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Can't they? We do have public hearing for that.
There's public hearing on this. Public comment on this.
We have to do public comment, Ms.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, so we got a motion and a second, and we'll open it to the public for public comment. Anyone from the public want to comment? Seeing none, close the public portion, roll call please.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
And Mayor Barton?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Ordinance 2019-3, an ordinance amending Chapter 9, Building and Housing Fee Schedule and Appendix.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Second?
Public comment on this, Mrs. Brooks?
Madam Brooks, Morris Middle Road. I'm just expressing my frustration with that last statement. I'm just so frustrated by the way you guys conduct business. It really needs
Do
major
you have comments on this,
modification.
Mrs. Brooks?
I have one question, since Mr. Boyd is here, he may be able to answer it. On the fee schedule, number 2, it has to do 2A, minor work involving a single trade. What is considered minor work?
Do you have any other comments, Mrs. Brooks?
No, that's the only question I have on the ordinance.
Okay.
On the fee schedule.
Okay, thank you. Tom, can you answer that question?
It's defined in NJAC 5:2-2:7.
So you're telling me that I have to go to, can you repeat that NJAC? I mean, I would expect that you would know that. Okay, go ahead, NJAC.
5:23, 7.
Anyone else from the public?
Thank you.
Roll call?
Thank you. Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Ordinance 2019-3, an ordinance amending, I'm sorry, I already did 3. Ordinance 2019-4, an ordinance repealing and replacing Article 8 of the Township Code entitled Public Functions and Similar Use of Public Places.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Any comment on this one?
Yep. Public comment too.
Any public comments on this ordinance? Mrs. Brooks?
I don't know, Stuart, are you gonna? I just- Oh, okay. Fran Brooks, Morris Meadow Road. This is just something Stuart and I were talking about. And this goes back to the issue of painting the roads or putting some kind of material on the roads that doesn't deteriorate, or the marking of the roads. That was not incorporated into the ordinance, which means that it's left open to the OEM director, who is very competent. It has nothing to do with Mr. Sunbury. It's just that without the marking issue being incorporated into the ordinance, if Mr. Sunbury should leave the job, that understanding of what constitutes acceptable marking will not be discussed with the new person, or may not be discussed with the new person. It may not occur to the new person that there shouldn't be certain types of marking. So it would be so much better if the marking issue could be incorporated into the ordinance. Mr. Sunbury spoke very informatively about the kind of marking that he talks to people about, but it would be so much better to have it in the ordinance. And I don't think that would necessarily trigger a re-notification of this ordinance. Do you? Mr. Lang, I mean, I don't think it's a major change, it's just, because there is something about marking, but it should be explained in the ordinance.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Brooks. Any other comments? Mr. Brooks?
I have a very similar comment in a general sense. If you're going to be referring to a standard such as there shouldn't be marking of the roads, or someone who's issued a permit who's putting out signs, they have to remove them. Unless those standards are unless those standards are in the ordinance, they may not go in force. Same is true of the ordinance that we just rushed through. If a small improvement refers to NJAC 5:23, well, your ordinance doesn't link up to NJAC 5:23. The minutes will probably reflect that's what the intent of the ordinance is. But beyond the minutes and what transpired here today, no one else will know that that's the reference that defines what minor work involving one trade is. Could get lost. Same with the road marking or signage or any other standard you want to address in the public functions ordinance. If you don't have those standards in the ordinance, then what you intend but don't write down in the future just might get lost.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Mr. Sudbury, would you come forward, please? And yeah, we'll close the public portion. Mr. Sudbury is our OEM coordinator. Bob
Sunbury, OEM, coordinator.
You were instrumental in writing this ordinance, and you did talk about markouts. Are you comfortable with the ordinance and how to handle markouts, or do you feel it needs to be changed in any way?
I'm comfortable. I could modify the application to specify that we want biodegradable markings, that there's no permanent markings to be used.
Okay.
So I don't think I need to modify the ordinance. I think I can just put that on the application as a checkbox.
You can establish conditions, right? Would be,
Yeah.
Reasonable
Yeah.
conditions. So whatever you put on the ordinance or on the application, and whatever conditions you establish pursuant to your authority herein,
So as
would
part
have
of
to
the
be
process.
enforced, yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't necessarily have to be in the ordinance, I agree.
They can be modified from time to time.
If other things come up that we need to make sure are enforced on there, they're still going through the right process and the right approval and the right review. Okay, Jim?
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
We're good, thank you. Everybody okay? Roll call?
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Bartley?
Ordinance on first reading, the public hearing of these ordinances will be May 28, 2019 at 7:30 p.m. 2019-5, and it's ordinance establishing the position of a part-time fire inspector for the construction office.
I'll make a motion for public hearing for ordinance 2019-5, May 28th, 7:30.
Thank you.
Second?
Okay, roll call?
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Bartley?
Yes. Okay, resolutions 2019-55, authorize Township of Tabernacle to execute an agreement with Brunswick County for cooperative participation in the Community Development Act of 1974. Second?
Second?
Okay, any discussion required? Roll call?
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Bartley?
Yes. Resolution 2019-56, approved change order number 1 for the 2018 park project, Sussman Enterprise. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Dan, you want to talk about that change order?
Sure, this was just basically closing out the project. During the course of construction, there was a couple minor changes that resulted in a net deduct of $4,275. So we're just processing the change order to credit the township back that money that was not, did not have to be expended.
Okay, thank you. Roll call?
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Bartley?
Yes. Resolution 2019-57, approved change order number 1 for municipal salt shed entranceway replacement project. Myo Construction Company Incorporated. Have a motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Doug, you want to explain that change order?
Well, let Dan explain that to me.
Sure. So once we got into the construction there, we found some additional rotted framing and sheathing that you couldn't see before they started to do the partial demo. And this was basically $5,500 for the additional work required to make sure that we secure that structure.
Roll call?
Okay, Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Resolution 2019-58, authorized cancellation of certain property taxes and refund pursuant to a 100% totally disabled veteran exception.
I'll make a motion, I have a question.
Okay.
Second. Second.
Okay.
Any idea how many more of these are floating around?
Done quite a bit.
Yeah, no, is there a way to be able to sort that out? No?
Department of Defense doesn't give us an advance notice on this.
Okay. Just trying to help streamline the process.
Roll call?
Thank you. Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes, and thank you to this gentleman for his service. Resolution 2019-59, authorize the appointment of Deputy Court Administrator, Kyle Godfrey. A motion.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Doug, you want to talk about, I believe you did the interviews for this position, correct?
We did it with the court administrator, our judge, and the Groton County VSA manager came and we went through some interviews. And Kyle was the agreed upon best candidate based on his experience. And,
Unanimous consensus?
yes, it was.
Good. Thank you.
We still on target, Doug?
We're still on target as far as I know, but we'll have a double check on that tomorrow with the court, so we can allow Woodland to do the notifications that they need to do.
Okay, roll call?
Yes. Who's done the roll call?
Me.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes.
You got them all?
Yes.
Okay. Approval of minutes. This is the January 2nd, 2019 reorganization meeting. A motion?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You want a roll call?
Yeah, we'll roll call. Sean?
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. January 22nd, 2019 regular and closed session.
Mayor, I'd like to split this vote if we can. One vote for regular, one vote for closed session, please.
Yep. So this will be the regular, January 22nd, 2019 regular session. I'll make the motion.
You have to second.
Second.
A roll call?
Before we call a vote, Mayor, I just want to make just brief comments. This was the meeting where I was not present during the regular session, but there were some pieces that I wanted to just have on the record. Part of the record of that meeting was that I did not contact Mayor Barton, that I was not going to be at the meeting. I did actually do that by email, and I also notified the remainder of the committee. Also, it indicated there were comments regarding allowing members of the committee to call into a meeting, and that we had a consensus from the committee that we never had a vote. We never took action on that. Any member of the committee has always been allowed to call in for meetings at any time. Mrs. Brown and Mr. Yates were certainly able to do that this evening, so I wanted to clarify that for the record, that there was never any action taken by this committee at any time that forbid them from calling in. But as I said, I'm not going to vote yes on this. Obviously, I'm going to have to abstain from this vote, but I wanted to have that inserted into the record.
Are you moving to modify the minutes, Mr. Lee? Did you want to modify the limits?
I believe that requires a writing of the minutes, which I don't know that it's necessarily fair to the clerk, but I wanted to clearly indicate in this vote of my comments for the record, which I'm satisfied with.
Okay, roll call?
Thank Mr. Lee?
Yes. I'm sorry, abstain.
Okay, should we do it again?
Yeah, let's do that, let's try that again.
Okay.
Can I reconsider that vote?
Recount.
Mr. Lee?
Abstain, please.
Thank you. Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Okay, January 22nd, 2019, closed session minutes, I'll make the motion.
I'll second, but I'd also like to have it indicated for the record that I was present during this portion of the meeting, which is not indicated in the minutes.
By phone, right?
Mhm.
Motion by Barton, seconded by,
Me,
Roll call?
Mr. Lee?
yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, February 11th, 2019, workshop and closed session.
You have to make a motion.
I make the motion.
I'll second it. Roll call?
Mr. Lee?
Abstain.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. February 25th, 2019, regular and closed session.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Roll call?
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. March 11th, 2019, workshop and closed session.
I make the motion.
Second?
Roll call?
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. March 25th, 2019, regular. Motion?
So moved.
Second.
Second?
Roll call?
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. April 8th, 2019, work session. Motion?
I make the motion.
Second.
Second?
Roll call?
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes.
April 14th, the 8th and
Approval of the
final.
bills? Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Okay, roll call?
Thank you. Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barton?
Yes. Okay, reports, Mr. Guzzi?
Just a quick update on the road program. Our WAC is scheduled to begin work, paving work on Carranza Road the week of May 13th, and then moving to Powell Place immediately following. So we should see some action on Carranza Road in the middle of May.
Thank you, Dan.
Yep.
Mr. Kramer?
We've got just came in the other day, the set of plans, or set of preliminary drawings for the gazebo. We'll be looking them over and getting them back for, to be ordered. Also, Public Works is working on the fourth and final week of brush pickup, and we have been on time all season. Happy to report that. That's all I have.
Okay. Mr. Lang?
I just wanted to catch up with Mr. Lee on the Verizon issue. I know there was a general discussion on whether or not to potentially piggyback on that lawsuit involving Verizon and the BPU. I just wanted to make sure if I need to take any action on that or contact anybody, or just want to make sure that that's being addressed to his satisfaction.
I'm going to give an update here in a few minutes.
Okay.
A brief update, because we need to have the full committee to have an extensive discussion and decision.
Yep, that's all I have. I want to make sure that was being addressed.
Okay. Jimmy and Lee, will give your updates, Jimmy?
Yeah, I have a letter from April 5th from Sylvia Del Vecchio that outlines specifically the streets where the 843 homes, 893 homes actually are going to be served by Verizon. One thing I will mention is that there are no homes that are on the western portion of 206 that are to be served. And there's also a few portions of Tabernacle on the eastern side that won't be served either. The requirement that we wanted, the whole point for this was to get underserved areas in the municipality taken care of, which Verizon will have completed by the end of September of this year we're in now. The question that the committee has to determine is whether or not they want to push for the remainder of the municipality to be built out. Based on the BPU agreement with Verizon, they are mandated by this agreement to build out the entire census tract. If the BFR applications and those requirements are met, which has happened. We did that with the 38 applications we had. So we've accomplished what we wanted to accomplish. The question is, do we want to fight for the remainder of the residents and push for a build out of the remainder of the census tract and essentially holding Verizon's feet to the fire when it comes to fulfilling their obligation under the BPU agreement. We have a couple of different avenues to go down, but I think the full committee, we ought to have some discussions about how we want to move forward. Essentially, do we want to fight for an alternative to the current provider for broadband to residents that already have broadband service? But I think that's a decision we need to make collectively with the five of us, because I will say that if that were the case, we have a couple different avenues that we have to explore, which we have to discuss.
Mr. Lee, are they, on the places they're going by to get to the 38 residents, are they offering service on a consistent basis along their lines, or?
Yes, and the reason that we're hitting 893 homes is because of just that.
Okay, are they offering it to commercial businesses along that line or not?
Commercial businesses will be eligible, yes.
Okay. Just trying to I get some questions occasionally, and I try to refer them to you, but
Yeah.
Good to have some background.
And I can, and this is, I think you have a copy of this already, but
Yeah, probably.
anyway, it outlines specifically the streets. It's very, I don't want to comment about how they're laying out their fiber, because I'm not sure it's a efficient business decision, but in any event, any resident's business that is in that line will be eligible, so we'll be able to work.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else, Steve?
No, I think we ought to put this on the workshop
Okay.
agenda for our next meeting. Workshop, I think it's probably a workshop decision.
Okay. Anybody on board?
The one thing I have to report, the fire company and rescue squad's they started their rescue training together. They've had a couple sessions at the TRS building. You know, they start indoors and they'll be working outdoors, and they seem to be moving forward with that.
Good. Congratulations.
I've attended all but one of them, so far to this point.
Okay, good.
I got two more things I forgot about.
Okay, good.
That was the Verizon question. The reason I was late, and I apologize for being late, I was attending the school board meeting across the street, and there were roughly 150 people in the room. Very difficult time over there. They have 2 additional layoffs that they are voting on. Mayor Bard and I are meeting tomorrow with the liaison committee, and I'm pleased that we're continuing with that. So it's a very difficult time for any school district in New Jersey right now. April 16th, I co-hosted a forestry tour of legislators, members of the Forest Fire Service, also members of the DEP, Highlands Commission, and New Jersey Audubon. And we looked at different places throughout not only Tabernacle, but also in Washington and Woodland Township, specifically talking about the importance of management practices outside of risk control burden when it comes to managing forests. How does that affect us? We have a lot of areas within Tabernacle Township that are part of the state forest that are very heavy in the fuel load. You can certainly attest to this. So the whole point for the forestry tour was to essentially brief legislators on the importance of having a different management approach to forestry. California is probably the best example. After the Paradise Fire, they completely changed their whole outlook when it came to managing forests. Now they have a fuel management process where they actually cut trees in a calculated way. I'm sure there will be more to come with this, but we spent a good period of time on Apple Pie Hill, and also the plantations between Apple Pie and Speedwell, and also going out to 532. And it was definitely an eye-opening experience for a lot of those legislators, but more importantly, I'm hopeful that we can help in terms of at least managing the relationship with legislators that are going to be in a decision-making mode, and also helping in terms of the Forest Fire Service trying to do a better job, and they do a phenomenal job with the limited resources they have, and the only thing that we're able to do is to do this thinning process to help reduce the fuel load to keep them safer. That's really a critical piece. And that was back on April 16th. I just wanted to share that with you. That's all I've got. Thanks, Joe.
Okay, thank you. Doug, before I give a report, well, I want to talk about some of the questions that were raised tonight. One was that we did put a placeholder, $25,000 in our budget for Sequoia if we should decide to move forward with the school to take over that school. I can't answer whether it's in the school budget. I suspect it is. It was last year to maintain that building. As far as the increases for Ms. Smith and Mr. Haynes, that'll be published at a later date, won't it, Doug?
We did not put $25,000 in the budget. We transferred.
I'm sorry?
We transferred from the public safety director's account and the rent for Woodlands Court about $13,000.
It was 12,200 got moved.
Okay.
It was basically, we looked at it as this wasn't going to happen. The school would have budgeted for through June anyway.
Right.
So
Okay.
That was your idea.
The meeting I attended, the Buildings and Grounds superintendent led you to believe that they had $50,000 set aside for taking care of that building.
Okay.
It may not have been that total amount. Some of it may have been used on some of the other buildings, but it was a good portion. I mean, you had mentioned 25,000. Maybe that's a more accurate figure from what you said in January. So, when they started, it was a 50,000 number.
Okay. And as far as the salary increases, they'll be advertised at a later date. Will they be available?
They'll be part of a resolution at some point in time.
Okay. And Doug, just for everyone's information, last week Doug and I were at the New Jersey Mayor's Conference on Friday afternoon, morning and afternoon. We sat in a meeting with Senate President Stephen Sweeney, and he laid out his path to progress plan, which is a 32-item plan on how he feels he could turn the fiscal problems in the state of New Jersey around. I would encourage you to go on that website and take a look at its path to progress. If you can't find it, just go to the Senate President's website. I'm sure you'll find it, and you'll see all his recommendations that he has in there. And one of them does have to do with schools, and it has to do with consolidating schools into more regional grammar schools. But there's 32 different items in there. But Doug, if you would, one of the sessions Doug and I went to had to do with recycling and the problems with recycling and with China and dirty recyclables. You want to talk about what the possible future impacts of that may be, Doug, to us?
It's been over the last probably 10 or 12 years that China has become the major purchaser of our recycling. We're one step away removed from it because the county handles all of our recycling, but it affects our rate and also our trash rate and all that. And at one point in time, we were allowed 5% contamination, which may be anything from plastic bottle in cardboard or styrofoam mixed in with something else that's not called trash. They were trying to get a pure product. Over the last 4 years, they've been gradually moving that number down. They've moved it to 0.5%, which is single stream recycling, which we've all gone to increase the volume and to get our numbers up to where the state projections say we should be. Can't get to it with the amount of waste that's going into our recycling cans. MERV just can't separate it that fine. The other problem that's coming along is right now, a lot of our recycling is now going to India and into China. They aren't going to wait 10 years to decide that they don't want. They're going to move to 1% or 0.5% fairly quickly, and then we're going to be recycling's not going to have a home, because over the last 15 years, the major recycling companies in the United States couldn't compete with the numbers that China was buying it for and what they were shipping back as product. So they've sort of gone by the wayside. Also, newspaper print, which was very profitable at one point in time. As we all know, newspapers are dying. Sorry about that. The printed word is, so consequently that market has dried up. Also, what it comes down to is, as individuals, we need to be diligent in what we put in our recycling cans. We're affected by two types of recyclers. One, the optimistic recycler who says, if I put it in there, they'll find a home for it. Well, we can't. You know, we only do 1, 2, and 5. All the other plastics we can't take. Glass on the commercial market doesn't have a market anymore, although we need it for weight, so there's a mixed bag there. And cardboard has to be just cardboard. It can't be all the styrofoam packing that's in the box that you throw the whole box in there with it. You can't do plastic hose, you can't do bowling balls, you can't put your metal in there because we have a separate metal collection. And the biggest offender more than anything else are plastic one-time use bags. The only place you can recycle them is back to the food stores where you got them. You can't throw them in your recycling, even though they have a nice recycling symbol on them. It is not. They jam the nerve up so bad that they end up going down 1 or 2 times a day to put crews in there with saws and knives to cut them out of the separators. So that's slowing the whole market down. Some of it gets through in pieces and that's considered a contaminant in whatever you're doing, cardboard, plastic, bottles, whatever. It's just a contaminant. That's the biggest problem we have in local recycling, and actually statewide and national, is one-time use plastic bags, or people putting their recycling in a green trash bag and throwing it in the dumpster here, or putting it in their can. And the county has now started to tag these when they see it obvious. And if you're tagged twice, I get the notice, and we're going to start sending out letters that why your recycling isn't going to be picked up. The old adage is if I leave it out there next week, they'll get it next week or in 2 weeks. Now, if they have a container that the driver has the address, if it gets there, he checks the can, as much time as that takes, and they're just stopping collecting when people put styrofoam and plastic bags in the recycling. So that's where it's headed. There's still a market for it. Burlington County has been fortunate over the years to have a fairly clean product. We can't get to the 0.5% yet because we need everybody's help to get a cleaner product to start with. If we had a cleaner product to start with, that's what we're shooting for. But what'll happen is what doesn't there goes to landfill, and instead of costing us only in our county taxes for the recycling, it now will cost us $72 a ton because it becomes trash. They absorb some of that right now, but last year they went from 2 years ago they were a little under $2 million in profit from what they were selling over what their costs were. For last year, they were in the $3 to $4 million loss, and the county can't absorb that on a consistent basis. So it'll affect our tax rate, our trash rate that we pay. We're obligated right now for the county recycling program to send our trash to the landfill. That's part of the agreement, always has been. They've always been very competitive on the rates. We have one of the better rates in the landfill business in New Jersey. We don't necessarily compete well with Ohio or Pennsylvania. Hence, most building material that you put in a roll-off goes to Hainesport and is railroaded out of the state because it's a better rate, even including transportation, but our regular municipal trash is competitively handled by Burlington County right now. It's getting tougher unless we can clean up our recycling. So that's where it is.
So the message I heard was we either do a better job at recycling or the costs are going to go up substantially high. And the water bottle, you leave the cap on it. Cardboard can't be wet, nothing can be wet, or they won't take it, they'll reject it. And those plastic bags that Doug talked about are a real problem. You don't put your recyclables in it and tie a knot in it and throw it in the recyclable. And the other one is pizza boxes. If there's any oil in the pizza box, they don't want them.
For a long time, they told us they got optimistic that they could get clean, and they did for a short while get clean. Good recyclers only put the clean stuff in, but now they're getting it with half the pizza still in it, so. It becomes that. But in the reference to wet cardboard, if anybody has a broken lid on their container, please call us and we'll replace it. So if you've got a cracked lid, broken lid in some of the early cans, give us a call. We have a supply of lids and we'll be glad to come out and change it.
And unfortunately, as Doug said, some of the commercial haulers are tagging the carts and they are not picking them up. So hopefully we don't have that problem. Education will go a long way. Thank you, Mr. James. Okay, public comment? Yes, Mr. Boyd.
I just need to correct the statement. Thomas Boyd, construction official. It's actually NJAC 5:23 2.17A. And happens to be 4 pages long for minor work.
Thank you.
10 seconds, nice job.
Anyone else? Mr. Brooks?
Stuart Brooks, Moores Meadow Road. At the last meeting, there was discussion about Tabernacle sending a letter to all residents regarding the school district's cuts in state aid and the resultant tax increases. My questions and my comments are this. I mean, we have elected people to sit as members of their board. They have their own authority. Why are you getting involved in their business? Not to say you shouldn't be concerned citizens. Why is the township spending its resources to address and do the work that's the business of the school district? It wasn't too many meetings ago when Colonel Lowe, as a citizen, wanted to ask you, the board, to get the committee to get involved with an issue of the school district. And Mayor Barton, your answer was, in essence, if you think that's an issue, you, Colonel Lowe, should go over there and address it to them because it's their business. Same principle applies here. I'm not saying that the cuts to state aid are unimportant or that the layoffs are not unimportant. They're very important. It's just not your business. It's the members of the school board who were elected to do that business. Second comment, at the last meeting, Chief Jackson gave public comment as to what his quarterly reports, quarterly numbers were. The contract with the PRS requires that he give a report. A report is what each of you gave in the report section of the agenda. It's different from public comments that we give when public comment is open. It seems pretty clear to me that his report should be on the agenda, just as your reports are on the agenda. His report should be submitted to you in written form, as Mayor Barton, you advised him to do, and it should be submitted to you in advance so that you can follow along as he presents it. And that format also allows citizens to ask questions, should there be any, just as they can ask questions of you, should we have questions about your report. Last comment, I was trying to follow Mr. Lee's comments regarding the minutes, and I forget the dates, but I was struck that it seemed, and I might have gotten this wrong, but it seemed as if the minutes didn't accurately reflect who was there, or who voted, or what was said. And it's my understanding that the essence of minutes is that they must reflect who was there, the substance of what was said. And that it's not a question of, does it take more work to revise them to get them right? The issue is, they gotta be right, but that's the only record of the meeting. Thank you.
You're welcome. Anyone else for the public? Mrs. Brooks?
Friend Brooks, Morris Middle Road, since Mr. Brooks took on the minutes issue, it's a violation to not have correct minutes, so the minutes should be corrected. If people on the committee have corrections to make, those corrections should be made in the minutes. That's the only way the public gets information about what business is conducted at meetings, and we have to believe that the information is correct. So if corrections are needed, they should be done by the clerk. The question about the salary increase, it was again unclear whether the people like, the employees like Kim Smith and Mr. Haynes are going to get a 2% increase. That was not answered. I'd like to move to the issue of Oakshade Road. At the last meeting, Mr. Guzzi reported that a grant was issued by the state regarding Oakshade Road. Now, according to your report, Mr. Guzzi, Oakshade Road, for the entire Oakshade Road, or two portions of it, have received a rating of 89 and 74, which is significantly over what Carranza Road, the section that we've been discussing over many months, which has the worst rating in the township, which is 58. I cannot understand why Oakshade Road, when it has this rating, should be attended to before you attend to Carranza Road. Now, I understand, Mayor, that your only interest is applying for a grant, okay? Now, there are issues with just applying for a grant. It's much more dicey. You've already allocated bond money, so you ought to finish Carranza Road instead of paving roads that are already far improved than Carranza Road is. The other issue about that is that I want to know, since you're only interested in grants for completing the project on Carranza Road, is Chemung Township going to reimburse us for the money that we're spending from the grant we received to pave their portion on the first section of the road? Are we receiving that money back? Or is this another subsidy to Chemung Township, just like the TRS transports are a subsidy, free transports that we pick up? So I'd like to know the answer to that, if we're going to get our money back from Chemung Township for paving their portion of the road. And that would be helpful if you could answer that question tonight. The other thing is, when we were talking earlier, or I was talking earlier, about the cost of having to re-advertise, the other issue that came up at the last meeting was having to re-advertise for the annual meeting schedule. Now, surely people can look at a calendar. I'm not sure who sets up that schedule, whether it's you, Mayor, in conjunction with the clerk, but frankly, the calendars are out there that one can consult to determine when the holidays are. So you went ahead, you put a schedule together, and you had to change it, and we have to re-advertise that. That's some more money that's wasted.
Thank you,
So I
Mr.
think that, well, I have a comment about cutting me off.
Well,
And
you're 15 seconds over. As I said,
well,
you get
many
3 minutes
people are
now.
50
If you're able to
seconds
comment,
further
you can go
over than I am.
15 seconds.
Mayor, unless you're going to impose that provision equally for all people, not just allow Mr. Jackson to go on for at least a minute, okay? You got a problem with your 3-minute rule. So I would think, put in a little thought about the 3-minute rule that you have, and apply it equally and make sure that male, female, male, everybody's taken care of and it's equally applied.
Mrs. Brooks, with all due respect, I gave Stuart another 4 minutes tonight at the beginning of the meeting.
No, you
and
did.
It didn't even,
You did.
and I was
You
on
did.
the clock, just to be clear.
You did. Well,
Okay,
that's good.
I was the clock guy
That's good.
tonight, and I can tell you that I didn't start it until probably about 3 minutes into Stuart's comments at the very beginning of the meeting.
Well, that proves my point. You
Well,
gave
my
him
point, and
4
and
minutes,
as you know,
and Mr.
and as you
Martin
know-
gave me 15 seconds.
and as
so-
you know, so I want you to
It's a
understand that some
disparity
people get more time and your husband happened to get more time
Well, I'm
tonight.
so glad that he got more time. I
Hey, listen, you guys
appreciate it.
worked out
The
okay.
only other thing that I would like to say is that if people need to be educated about the recycling, why not maybe the Eagle Scouts could develop a program to go out and knock on doors and educate people about the importance of recycling properly. So, thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Okay, I'm going to close the public portion, and I will say this about Carranza Road. As everyone knows, half that road belongs to Chemung Township, and we're in the process of scheduling a meeting with Chemung. Unfortunately, the mayor had a death in the family, and we were unable to accomplish that, but we're still working on that. And the goal here is for us to pay half, and for them to pay half, or have the state give us a grant to cover the majority of that road. And in good faith, we have gone forward. We paved the first section of the road, and that paving is on both sides of the road because it would not make sense to just pave one side of the road. We would be encouraging people to drive on the wrong side of the road. And as far as interest, that's not the only interest I have. I'm not just interested in grants. I'm interested in everything that goes on in Tabernacle Township. As far as the school, Mr. Brooks brought up about the school district. And as we all know, and Committeeman Lee was over at the school board meeting, our school is losing $313,000 this year. And that decision was made by the governor of the state of New Jersey. Now, everyone on this committee has different relations with different folks. Committeeman Lee happens to have some strong relationships with legislators. I happen to have strong relationships with other legislators. And anything we can do as a committee to influence some legislators not to hurt our school district. Clearly the school, yes, it's a fight that they have to try to get the funding restored. But as elected officials, I tend to believe that the State House pays a little more attention to elected officials, mayors, deputy mayors, committeemen, freeholders, senators, than they would to a superintendent of schools. Not to diminish the superintendent of school, because our superintendent is leading this fight with 74 other superintendents. I was at a meeting in Trenton with the NJEA where we laid out a game plan of how we're going to try to get the governor's attention in this. And so the reason for the letter, which we haven't done yet, as Committeeman Lee said, we'll be meeting with the school tomorrow night, is the residents need to hear what's going on in Trenton and why their taxes are going up. Their taxes are going to go up, and you know, we have a stake in this because we're raising our taxes this year. The school's going to raise their taxes. Lenape District's going to raise their taxes. The same resident is going to see the raise of all those combined. So when it makes good sense for us to be involved with the school, then we'll be involved with the school. As far as the school's business, yes, it's their business. They have a school board. It's their buildings to manage. It's their district to manage. But if we can help them in any way, that's what we're here for. You want to add to that?
You said it perfectly.
Okay, thank you. Okay. At this time, we're going to go into closed session. Resolution number CS 04-29019, matters relating to contract negotiations, appraisal service for Irish Causeway.
And just so the record's clear, Mayor, we're going to discuss in executive session those proposals and qualifications concerning the provision of appraisal services.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion.
Lee?
Yes.
Seconded by?
Second.
Roll call?
Thank you. Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Moore?
Yes.
Mayor Barkley?
Yes.
Thank you.